Okay, so we need to talk about Tamlin. This is not gonna end well. What am I even doing? This is like a terrible idea. I might enrage a few people, but I have to bring it out there. I feel like this point of view is just not really talked about. Tamlin. We all know him, most of us hate him, and we love to hate him. If there's anything or anywhere you're somewhat familiar with the book side of social platform, whether it's BookTube, Bookstagram, BookTok, if there's one character that gets a lot of hate, it's Tamlin. And to be fair, I don't find 100% agree with that, which is dangerous to say, and I get that. And here's the thing, before I start talking to you about why I think that, there is one thing that I do really need to mention. That I understand where a person comes from and that they're mentally unstable. Does that mean that I agree with their actions? Obviously, what he did with Feyre, you know what? I never said her name out loud, and I think that's how I always just have it in my head. Feyre. I'm gonna go with it. What he did to her is not okay. Plain and simple. It really isn't. But that I understand where his anger management issues come from. Yes. Does he desperately need a therapist? Also yes. Do I think he deserves a redemption arc? Yeah. That's, oh god. For anyone who watched this and think like, I don't even know who Tamlin is. Very simple, very briefly, he is one of the, I think, more main characters in the Acotar series. Is A Court of Thorns and Roses, by the books of Sarah J. Maas. In the first book, he is this very hurt man, boy, fae, male, whatever we're gonna look, who tries to break the curse, and for that he meets Feyre, who has to fall in love with him. So it's kind of like a Beauty and the Beast sort of retelling. That's the first book, and then from that moment on, it just goes into its own thing. The thing is, with Tamlin, is that I consistently see all the videos and posts and how much we all hate him. And yes, I hate what he did and some of the choices that he made. I'm like, God, how does a person make that of a terrible mistake if you're a High Lord of any court? Like, you have to have some knowledge of what happens, like, politically and the choices that you make. Because let's be realistic, we can all agree that Rysand is really good at it. So I thought to myself, well, let's look up his early life of Tamlin, because I forgot. And personally, does make me realize that he deserves a redemption arc. Now, to make my point clear and think of why he deserves a redemption arc, is I'm gonna compare him once in a while to Rysand. So you might be thinking, Manon, why do you think he deserves a redemption arc? What are you thinking? Are you okay? And I know you want to click away so badly right now. But I'm gonna try to explain it. And to do that, we're gonna look at Tamlin's youth, childhood, and also I'm gonna compare him sometimes to Rysand, because Rysand obviously is someone who's really good at ruling courts and doing all his thing. And Tamlin is just kind of like, where I'm constantly like, what? No, what? What? Okay, that's a terrible decision. And then it turns out to be a terrible decision. With Tamlin is that he's the youngest. He had two older brothers, and I think if I understand it, like the summary that you can find on his life is that his brothers were a lot older because they were already like fighting with their father in the war and were already learning a lot about how to rule courts and who would, follow their father's footsteps. And when you look at Tamlin, he was a lot younger, and very early on he was like, I have no desire to rule. I don't want to rule a high court. I'm just here for the vibes. It's mentioned that, like, if his brothers knew that he was vying for a place of the throne and to rule the Spring Court, they would have killed him instantly. As a kid. Like, as a child. So, obviously, they're like, alright, you're not interested? Cool, great, whatever. I have 2 other sons who are, like, killing it. They're great. Go do your own thing. Which he did, and he ended up, you know, joining the war. But he was like, I'm just gonna join this warband to, you know, do something for my dad, to make sure that he at least thinks that I'm somewhat useful. And this was purely to please his dad. At this point, I'm gonna shift to Rhys. Rhys is also put into the Illyrian camps to train, which obviously that we know is like extremely hard, but, and it's a very different reason, he also got friends there. He got to know Cassian, he got to know Ezreal, he obviously had a really good connection to Morrigan, and I think this is like already where there are significant differences. You've got Rhys on one hand, who learns about how to rule a court, who learns the politics behind it, and also learns properly how to fight and has friends. And then you have Tamlin, who is socially not skilled, doesn't learn anything about politics and court etiquettes and anything like that. So I think in childhood there are already major differences. To know that, like, Tamlin is probably very lonely, he doesn't really have any friends, and it's mentioned multiple times, and that's why, for example, Lucian became his emissary after Lucian left the Autumn Court on for quite brutal reasons. He went to the Spring Court, and Tamlin took him in as his emissary because he already had so many connections among court. I mean, Lucian already was socially pretty good, who also knew a little bit about court etiquettes, and Tamlin didn't. Now, you might be wondering, girl, he has over a few hundred years old. He should have learned. Yes, for sure. But as soon as he took over, or well, not took over, when his father and brothers killed Rhys's mother and sister, and then Rhys and his dad came to the Spring Court and killed Tamlin's brothers and parents, naturally he's the only one left to take over the Spring Court, so he gets all the powers. Then he kills Rhys's dad, and then Rhys gets all the powers in Night Court, hence why they hate each other, among a multitude of other reasons which happens around that time. But here's the thing, because he's the only one left, no one assumed he would do anything. He's only known as like this giant, you know, warmongering person who has no idea what he's doing, who's clearly has some anger management issues. And all of like the people, you know, the higher placed people like the High Fae who helped with that, a lot of them either go to other courts or just leave their position. So what happens is there's this giant void of advisors, of power, of anything. He doesn't know how to feel. He has no friends. He has no social skills to make friends or help advisors. He has no advisors to give him advice. He has no idea how to rule a court. He has no idea how to do politics. Like, the thing that he did during the war is fight and write dirty limericks and wanted to win those competitions because he's a very competitive person. Does that sound like someone who knows what they're doing when they're ruling a court? No. Therefore, I think that I can kind of understand the differences because Rhys Knight became High Lord of the Night Court. He had very strong advisors and friends. I mean, for example, take Aaron, take Morgan. They all knew what was going on and they were aware because they were either known from their history, from how long they've been alive, which is Aaron, to just where they grew up in a type of family, in a type of place. There is a significant difference there that we're just not acknowledging enough. The thing is that when it comes to the differences between Rhys and Tamlin, when they take over their courts, it's gigantic. Like, really, really bad. I mean, first of all, they both have lost their entire families. Rhys had other people around him, and Tamlin didn't. Rhys knew what he was doing. He knew what he needed to do politically. He knew what he wanted to change. He had years to think about that. Tamlin had no clue what he was doing, and everyone left him. That must not have been a great feeling at all, and he probably, like, blames himself for the fact that it even happened, that Rhys's mom and sister, and I think he mentions that in the books, that he does feel guilty about it. But the reality is that at this point we don't know how the conversation with his father went, because all we know is that he's like, I told my father. It's very important to understand that, like, we still don't know his complete story amongst that time. Like, they were friends, they were close, they told each other a lot. And I think you don't just say, like, to your dad who you know hates him, like, oh yeah, I don't like camping there. It's just, I mean, I wouldn't call him the brightest star in the room, but, like, I don't think he's that stupid. Probably Tamlin also felt backstabbed by his father, and we don't know the relationship that he had with his mom. He seemed like he really cared for her, but we just don't know what type of person she is, or was. Here's the thing. You're asking someone who has never learned anything and has no friends, no support system. That's basically, like, he has no support system to rule a court, to do the best to, like, make all these changes. Like, he's never learned anything else. And it's not like people are expecting him with open arms, like, yeah, come take a look. I mean, first of all, he probably never learned that asking for help, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's not the type of relation, like, of culture that there was. It's probably really looked down upon as, like, you know, the toxic masculinity that we see in a lot of courts, like the Autumn Court. So if you have someone who's like, I've lost everything multiple times, everyone leaves me all the time for something better, for something, like, I'm never good enough, because, like, that's kind of the message that he gets. No one wants me. I shouldn't expect anything from life. To say, have someone over him and be like, I'm taking that away from you now. I can see that, like, one of the unhealthy responses is a complete sense, like, I want to control every single thing. And I can understand you might have anger management issues, because a lot of the older High Lords, you know, we still see bare enough today, are not necessarily kind, are not necessarily ones that are able to properly regulate their emotions. So if you've never learned that, and have always seen these really terrible toxic behaviors, the question is, how much can you expect that person to change? It's not like he has internet laying around. It's not like he's like some help psychology YouTube channel, like, I don't know, Psych2Go, that is like, this is what you should look out for toxic parents. It's why I think that he deserves a redemption, at least a shot at a redemption arc. Let's just try it. Like, I want him to get a shot at a redemption arc. Purely for that reason, because I think that if he would have a support system and he starts addressing that, the way he views the world and the way he responds to the world is terrible. Like, just terrible. Not just that, but also, like, the Supreme Court itself, it deserves to be built up again. However inconsistent the world building of the Supreme Court is, if he has a shot at a redemption arc and he's still just doing what he does and just, you know, being terrible and controlling, and his anger management is just through the roof bad, yeah, go hate him all you want. I don't care. I'll join. Like, that's the thing. Ooh. That's what I think about it. So yeah, if you enjoyed this and you think that sounds interesting, I want to hear more of your opinions. I can do more about it, and I have a lot, like I said, I have a whole thought pattern about Ares and about some of the other books that I'm reading. Or if you want to hear my opinion on one life, like mostly by a book series, let me know in the comments down below. And if you like the video, subscribe, and then I'll let you know when a new video comes up. Up until then, happy reading!